It promotes the demonization of Jews, as well as, of course, demonization of anyone who speaks out against it as an Islamophobe, which is obviously, as everyone knows by now, is a Muslim Brotherhood term. And it undermines the constitution to promote Sharia and Islam. And as we know, the Sharia, as I cover extensively, is anti-constitutional. It is anti the basic precepts of Western law and democracy. Now, in our Western culture, we have a saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. However, something that I learned from my time in the Middle East, working and across numerous countries in the Middle East on my time there, they have a different saying. They say, do not let your enemy know that he's your enemy. So they work by stealth. They are very, very careful, right? The Sutcliffe report is doable for Muslim Brotherhood members since they have a criminal enterprise with their stated goal being the end of our government, and that is correct. I have covered the Muslim Brotherhood before. I've discussed their plans for domination of the US, and I won't do that on these sets of slides, but I can go back to that again. Thunderous, before we go, anything that you would like to add?
I was just thinking to myself as soon as you read that, it reminds me of the hadith where Muhammad said, we smile in their faces, yet our hearts curse them.
Correct. Yeah, this is something that very few people know. Not many people actually know this saying, but I must be one of very few people that are aware of this and have heard this. Right, now, to continue. Why is there zero discussion of the powerful, wealthy, competing interests of the Islamic lobby? Now, I want to bring your attention to two people. This guy is called John Mearsheimer and Stephen Walt. They wrote this book, The Israel Lobby and U.S. Foreign Policy. It's subtitled How a Powerful American Interest Group Has Created Havoc in the Middle East, Damaged Israel Itself, and Now Threatens an Even More Perilous Future. I would give this thing 0 stars. I think it overrates itself with a number of stars here. Now, these two guys were responsible for mainstreaming the narrative against Israel, right? That there is an all-powerful Israeli lobby that controls U.S. Middle East policy and, conspiratorially, the U.S. itself. Now, for those of you who've watched me, I've covered the Hamas Covenant, or the Hamas Charter. I've read to you Article 22, which is a conspiracy theorist's wet dream. The only thing that is not covered in Hamas Charter Article 22 is that the frogs are being turned gay, and that trans-dimensional aliens are controlling the planet. Any comments from you, Thunderous?
I don't think there's really much to comment on that. No.
Yeah. Yeah?
No, sorry.
Okay. So for those of you who have the time, look up Article 22 of the Hamas Charter. They are a wing of the Muslim Brotherhood in Palestine. So now their book ignored the existence of rival Arab Islamic interests. And coincidentally, so does what we call the quote-unquote truth community on YouTube. Now, they portrayed Arabs as impotent, as unable to affect their own fate, or to influence U.S. actions. Basically, they mainstreamed the poor Arabs have no power talking point. They're just poor goat herders living in caves. With the Hamas Charter, this promotes the anti-Israel, anti-Jewish, Jews control the government talking point, which serves and benefits the Arab lobby. Now, Islamic money promotes this narrative, cloaked most often as pro-Palestinian, obviously in an attempt to demonize Israel and the Jews. So the question is that I had here is, how did the online truth community all become suddenly apologists for Islam? Because this is all there is. Today, we're going to look at the money that is being spent. We're going to see that in academia, Islamic money dwarfs Israel's spend by something like, and this is based on the figures that we know, right? And we know that there's a lot of money being spent that is not being tracked, not being reported. It dwarfs Israeli spend by something like 50 to 1, by 50 times. So understand, this is a great deal more money. Now, Israel, where it does spend money in American universities, is for the purposes of 1, biotech research, basically farming, and 2, food production, and 2, medicine. Whereas Islamic money goes into dawah, which is to control think tanks, to control political science departments, counterterrorism. I know exactly because I ran into that hard one time while I was studying counterterrorism. And yeah, so there are some serious problems. Your thoughts?
No, I was just thinking to myself, it's the arguments presented by, as far as the media is concerned, as far as pro-Palestine, is more emotional, not logical, and that's how to win the argument over from their point of view.
Right. So when I studied counterterrorism at Leiden University, I presented, at that time, Raqqa was just taken over by, I think, French forces at the time, and they released a bunch of papers that were taken from the headquarters of ISIS. All of these documents, now, the students in the class, now, I was literally the only person that had field experience. I was the only person that worked in the industry. There were numerous Muslims who were there simply as gatekeepers, there to raise a cry and complain to the administration the moment someone said anything bad about Islam. We were able to talk about Christian terrorism, Buddhist terrorism, but when we got to the section on Islamic terrorism, it was like, okay, well, religion of peace, let's have a nice day. So let's talk about Christian terrorism. That was our discussion on Islamic terrorism, because they were frightened, they were terrified of being harassed by the Muslims in the group. As I said, I was literally the only person that had any actual field experience. Right. Now, that actually worked in the industry. And I presented my findings on what ISIS had in Raqqa. All of it was Orthodox, Sunni, Islamic legal text from the Sharia. I got banned from the course because of this. So understand, this is affecting academia, and I saw this firsthand. Right. Now, let's look at a typical example from social media of the kind of demonization. Paul, you're waiting for? That has started. Sorry, Paul, is there... yeah, I have started. Is there something that I am missing? Okay, so a typical example from social media. Israel's population of 8 million people comprises but 0.001% of the global population, and is the cause of 99% of the conflicts that have occurred since 9/11. Right? Now, the Israeli government, through AIPAC and other Israeli lobbies, have a stranglehold on American politics. Now, when they say stranglehold, what they mean is has popular support among Americans. We'll cover that again later. They claim that they have a stranglehold on all branches and levels of the American government, that 96% of the 6 major Western news media outlets are controlled by them, and they totally control U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East and elsewhere. They claim that through collusion between government and the media, collectively Israel has grossly influenced the hearts and brainwashed the minds of the Western world by spewing out pro-Israel propaganda on an almost daily basis. Now, with $22 trillion in debt and $6 trillion spent on wars since 9/11, do you feel you're getting max whack for your tax buck? I don't. Now, they claim that, of course, this money is being sucked up by Israel. Now, let's have a quick look at Islam and the problem with Islam. Since 9/11, there have been more than, this figure's a week old, 40,689 recorded Islamic Jihad terror attacks. In 2021, there were 53 countries, had 2,258 attacks, murdering 11,187 people, injuring 9,581 in 2020, 54 countries, nearly 2,200 attacks, murdering over 10,000, injuring nearly 8,000. 2019, 45 countries, 1,200 attacks, 6,800 people killed, injuring 7,500. 2018, nearly 2,000 attacks in 55 countries, nearly 12,000 murdered, 11,500 injured. This is because, well, Islam is a religion of peace. So understand, when you go back, and I've taken this back to 2015, you can see on average between 50 and 60 countries are attacked each year, with thousands of murders. In 2016, you had 21,000, and 2015, 27,000 murders and 26,000 injuries. And we know that the actual figures are higher. Your thoughts, Thunderous?
That's nearly 100,000 murders in less than 10 years.
Yes, it's 105,475 murders in 15,000 attacks.
There's not really much you can comment on that. The numbers speak for themselves.
Yeah, and that is since 2015. Islamic terrorists, now, there are hundreds of Islamic terror groups. Right. Now, the Arab lobby has operated unseen. It has no visible public HQ like AIPAC. It operates by stealth. It is hardly known to the public and is therefore not discussed.